Good vibes, thick thighs inside the minds of psychic mamas. Good vibes, thick thighs inside the minds of psychic mamas. Vibes only, vibes psychic mamas. Vibes only, your favorite psychic mamas. Vibes only, vibes psychic mamas.
Welcome back, you guys, to season freaking 4 of Good Vibes, Thick Thighs. I am your host, Gemini 211, aka Bad Bitch Energy, and I'm here with my brujita friend. Do we still call you brujita? I don't remember.
I don't even know anymore, but it's Roxy, aka Intuitive Rocks, and our first guest of season 4. We're super excited. It is Nicole from Ouroboros Healing.
Yep, that's me. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me, ladies. I'm so excited to be here. It's going to be fun. I can feel it already. The vibes are there.
Yep. For sure. For those of you who don't know, she's actually co-hosting the Jamaica trip with Vero Estrada.
That's gonna be power.
That's
gonna be amazing. So much power.
Like, not to toot our own horns or anything, but we keep, collaborating and working together and just like finessing little things. And yesterday we actually had
your favorite psychic mama.
our weekly co-working session, and we kind of needed to move some stuff around for the itinerary, and then we got it, we nailed it. Everything is like seamlessly moving from our our live coaching prior to the retreat, and it's just going to work out really nicely when we get together in person to like really embody things and work towards more of like an immersive experience versus just a cognitive experience, which is what we're doing in the beginning. So we're just like, we were so happy at the end of the session, like, oh my God, this is going to be so amazing. It's going to be so great. We're excited.
I'm excited for you guys. I also can't wait to hear afterwards how it all went, because I'm sure it's going to be like a blast. But I had to skip out this time because of the wedding planning.
Well, there will be more, we're definitely going to rinse and repeat and see what works, see what needed improvement. And, we're just going to continue to make it awesome and serve our community. That was the big thing that we kind of walked away with, was like, no matter what, like our focus is on the transformation, our focus is on our clients and making sure that they're getting the best results and the best care from both of us.
Oh, how exciting. So those of you that are kind of like out of the loop, we've had Vero Estrada on our podcast, I think two seasons already. She's promoted on the podcast the what is it, retreat. So
it's,
if you guys
Alchemy of Self-Love retreat happening July 31st through August 5th.
That's gonna be exciting.
Plug. Yeah. And it's like right before the Lionsgate portal.
Oh, yeah.
Venus is going to be in retrograde. There's just so many things that are like aligned perfectly for this type of transformational work,
Ooh, that's exciting. That's going to be magic and power. Perfect weather. Amazing. All right, Roxy, I'll let you kick this one off.
All right. So first off, you all know I like to do like my research and such. I did have a clarity call with Nicole, which went like phenomenal, that I keep on telling her, like, give me time and I'm gonna work with you. This year I want to pack so many things into it, but I need to remember, like, bro, the wedding, wait, there's still time.
Yeah, take care of the wedding. You only get married once, So they
I
say.
mean, this would be my second time, but but this would be my first like wedding.
I mean, you're like
celebration.
real wedding then, like, you know, like
Yeah.
your real love. Yeah.
So during the session, obviously I got to know what she does and stuff. And it's like, it's part of like the emotion code, right?
Yeah. That's one of the modalities I use, emotion code.
So go ahead and give a rundown of what you do in your healing practice, and then I'll jump in and share my experience, the way it went with her.
I would say that my practice has really evolved. I think most of what I do now is I work with first gen mujeres who are kind of like working through maybe the beginning or like early on stages of their healing journey. If they've had like toxic romantic relationships, or if they come from difficult childhoods or parental like relationships. My mission is really to work with high achieving professionals who are looking to expand on their healing journey. So if they've done therapy, like I'm in therapy, I love therapy, but there's so much more to us than just what's happening up here in our minds. So I like to bridge the world of psychology with energy work and really supportive, compassionate style transpersonal counseling. I've been working with my healer and my coach. I worked with her for like 3 years, and the last 2 years I really focused on the like transpersonal spiritual counseling part of it. And that's like a combination of, it's like trauma informed, it's very cognizant of what's happening in our bodies as we're working through whatever it is we're going to be discussing, right? So whatever you're working on, it could be self-worth, which is the one thing that I kind of focus on the most, because I feel like we sort of limit ourselves. We're negative. We have kind of like a negative outlook, or we're feeling like we don't want to bother people. So we don't speak up. We don't use our voice. There's like so much that is affected by having low self-worth. So that's my root. That's what I really try to focus on and help my clients move through whatever trauma they experienced that move their self-worth, like the bar down. And we start to build that up, and that comes through a lot of the talking. And then I do a lot of inner guidance work. It's somatic healing, basically. And that just means related to the body. So I like to say that I get my clients out of their head and into their bodies. And most high achieving women that I work with are in their heads a lot. And they kind of, over time, especially with trauma, we learn how to downplay what we're feeling, because maybe somebody, constantly told us that what we were experiencing didn't matter or wasn't really happening, or like, oh, you're just being sensitive, like dismissing what we were experiencing at the time. So we sort of, I use myself as we, because I'm very much included in like my ideal client. Like I help who I have, I guess, who I've left behind, who I've outgrown. Right. So a lot of what I've gone through is the stuff that I share with my clients. So that's like one part of it. And then the emotion code is essentially like, it's energy work that uses kinesiology, which is muscle testing, basically. So like the idea is that we have this like energy body, and it's all related to our physical body. So if I were to be in this position of being like testing myself with muscle testing, if I were to ask yes or no questions to my subconscious mind, I would either be strong, I would be in alignment, and my energy body and my physical body would be kind of like connected and strong. So that would be a yes response. And then the no response would mean that I'm not in alignment. So my energy body and my physical body, that connection is a little bit weak, just a little bit. So the way that I muscle test is I do like the finger, the little loop in the finger. So if I say, show me yes, and it's tight, or I say, show me no, and it's just a little bit weak enough where I can like slide my finger through. So I ask yes or no questions because that's all I can really test. I can't test something more elaborate, right? So I usually ask my clients if I can have permission, and then I connect into their energy field, and I don't really like go into their energy. That's something that I've had people ask, but I always do protection. I cast my circle and my bubble and all of that. I call in my guides. I call in their guides, and then I work like I see like a wall, like I'm right here, with them. I'm not like on the other side of it, because then it's like we're enmeshing our energy, and it's just not that great, because then it's hard to disconnect, or I'm like processing for them in the session. So over time, I've learned that I'm right here, but I'm not like this.
Intertwined with them.
Intertwined, exactly.
Yeah.
So I ask, like, do I have permission to work with your energy? And they say yes. And then I become like a proxy, like I'm like in place of you so that I can test myself, and it's working with your energy. So that's what I did with Roxy, is I asked for permission, and then we just started like that, working with yes and no questions. And the structure that I sort of have created, because I work with this specific type of client, like I always ask about relationships, I ask about their self-worth. And then from there, we start to find out, like, yeah, I've really struggled with being hard on myself all these years. Like I'm really someone that holds the bar really high for myself, and then sometimes for others. So we start to talk about that, and I'll say something like, is there a trapped emotion that's preventing Roxy from having compassion for herself? So that's kind of how I will frame the questions. And from there, I'll test myself. Is that a yes? And it's a yes. And then I'll go through my emotion code chart, which there's an app for it, obviously. Duh. There's an app for everything. So that's my emotion code chart. And there's about 60 or so emotions that pretty much can like encompass all major emotions. And then I ask if it's on the right side, or column A or column B, and then I narrow it down by odd or even. And then I narrow it down to like that quadrant of emotions. And from there, I test, I say, is it like abandonment? Is it betrayal? Is it forlorn? And then I get like eventually like a yes response. And then we go through the process of releasing that. And the thing about it is that these are all based in our subconscious. So our subconscious mind is here to protect us. That's literally all it's for. It's like running programs that are remembering old wounds, old patterns, old experiences. That one time you were in class at like in 5th grade that, you said something in front of the class and everybody laughed at you. Like in retrospect, we think like, oh yeah, like I'm totally over that. But your subconscious mind holds that memory and holds an emotion with it, because our subconscious mind doesn't understand English, Spanish, Chinese, whatever. It understands emotion and pictures. So that's why when like people are saying like, this is how you manifest, it's because our subconscious mind is the one that's like signing on to that program, that we're allowing that into our subconscious mind. So if you're thinking about something, but you're not feeling it, there's no emotion there to connect into the subconscious mind.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
It's crazy because before we even got on here, I know Roxy's, I could totally see Roxy just like the light bulb shining and everything's like but it's funny because before we jumped on this, I'm like, Roxy, we have to do another episode, because as many readings as I do, the one thing that I was just telling her, like the one thing that I don't know how we could emphasize even more on is women that are in toxic relationships, or that are like, Andrea, I can't leave. Like, why can I not leave? Why do I stay? If I know I'm being cheated on, I still stay. If I know I'm getting abused, I still stay. Why? So I'm like, Roxy, we need to touch on this. And she's like, oh, Nicole's here today. I'm like, oh, perfect. So here we go for everybody who has done a reading with me, and you're like, Andrea, why? Andrea, why am I staying? If I know it's wrong, I'm staying. This is gonna be my go-to episode. Like, you need to go check this out. You need to go listen, because I really feel like it's true, like that trapped emotion that we don't even realize. like how you said, the subconscious, how it's even something so little as like an abusive relationship that we continuously put up with and put up with and put up with. And we finally leave, but then we still have those like bad traits or those bad like habits.
Yes, it's our pattern. And I say, and I always feel weird like typing it out when I'm doing, you know, interviews or like updating my website, like helping people with toxic relationship patterns. Like, eres tóxica, but I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, let's just call it what it is. And sometimes everyone, like, just as a qualifier, everyone has toxic tendencies. And the only thing that is something that's, you know, maladaptive, destructive, not supportive. And it's not always our fault. That's the thing. So a lot of, like, I do a free workshop about healing generational trauma, and plug. So me and my co-host are actually doing a freebie, and we were offering this to people who like signed up to work, to talk to us about the retreat. So that's actually happening very soon. But that way, like, if your listeners want to join us, they can kind of get to know us and learn about this type of toxic relationship trauma. But essentially, like, we gravitate towards things that are familiar, whether it's good or bad. And that's the thing, is that in like our human development, in our childhood, that's relative. Like, good and bad is kind of at the discretion of the person experiencing it. So what would be normal for me would be like terrible for someone else who experienced a different upbringing, right? So when we move into our adult relationships, we gravitate towards things that we're familiar with, that we know how to handle, that we know how to respond to, even if it's like clapping back or yelling or, you know, being sassy, being, I don't know, what's the other word, like passive aggressive. Like, there's certain things that we are comfortable with because we know that. So when we're in these relationships that are toxic, abusive, even emotionally abusive, it's almost as if there's a subconscious program running that has prepared us for what we're dealing with in our romantic relationship. So we get it. We know the program. We're running the program. It just doesn't feel good because we think, oh, well, that was just my mom. Oh, that's just how my mom talked to me. That's just how my dad was. You know, he never really showed emotion. He never really hugged us. And then you end up with someone who's like stone cold and not intimate, doesn't go vulnerable, like, just kidding. You know, like doesn't compliment you. And you're just like, oh yeah, he's just quiet, you know? And it's like, people don't really make the connection until after the fact, right?
I feel like we hear that a lot. Like, don't you hear that a lot with like, I don't know, it's just like I'm going to call it an excuse, but like a lot of times where we like, you say something and you're like, but I'm this way because whatever, like that's how I was treated, or like me growing up, right? Like, and I think Roxy, I think you were kind of the same. I don't remember, but where like our parents weren't really affectionate. So we grew up like not being, were you the same? I don't remember. Was your parents affectionate?
They were. It was the abusive relationship that stopped that like touchy-feely affection.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's like
about trauma, you know.
Yeah,
trauma.
like our excuse where it's like we were like, I was born or I was raised to not hug and kiss and be affectionate with my kids, so now I don't do it. But it's an excuse. We're now like that, we're on our healing journey, we're like checking ourselves, like, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to, you know,
perpetuate that pattern. Yeah. And that's one of the main things that I identify with as being someone who helps Latinas break generational patterns. Like, that's, I feel like what we're here to do. We're really born into a great time in history where we have the luxury, the opportunity, the privilege, whatever you want to call it, like we can heal. Whereas our parents were living in their survival patterns. And if you're first gen and they were immigrating, then there's a whole other dynamic to that, which is why I love working with first gen Latinas, because there's just so much there to unpack. Like, and I work with them around work, rest, productivity, because our relationship to work as first gen Latinas is completely different than with other people. It's like work is a privilege. You should be so lucky. Like, you don't turn down work, don't turn down an opportunity for money. Like, you got to do good, you got to do better, like you got to exceed. Like, it's just so much pressure to like do better, do better, do better, do better, that, and we weren't really taught how to balance that out, how to rest, how to integrate what we've learned. Like, do we need to keep achieving? When can we rest? When is it enough? Like, when have we reached that like point where we're like, oh yeah, I'm satisfied, this is good. So a lot of that has kind of made its way into my practice as like commonplace. That's what's normal for my clients to kind of work through. And our survival patterns that we learn from our parents, those are the things that we're now taking sort of ownership of and healing that and integrating that. Whereas our parents couldn't really, and they're still kind of in their own patterns. So yeah, our survival patterns are really the thing that helped us cope through childhood, through a toxic, abusive relationship as an adult. And that's where I kind of see myself too. Like, my childhood wasn't super like abusive or traumatic. You know, my dad and my mom separated, so I did have that like single mom life, but my trauma came later with my own toxic relationship. I was with a narcissist for about 2 years, and that just completely like destroyed my sense of self and who I was. Like, I was just like a shell of a person. And that's how my healing journey kind of started, was just trying to reclaim who I was and see, like, am I different? Where have I grown? And a lot of the work that I did there in that whole reclamation was the catalyst for my program Reclaiming, because I felt like anyone who has gone through trauma or, you know, lived sort of like complex PTSD where they've had like constant traumatic situations like violence or emotional or physical abuse in the home, it's the reclamation of self is the journey. And that's the hardest part, to like admit that you lost, start the journey of like, it's so complex and it's so hard, but it's so much worse living in that fear, or I don't know, like anxiety, anger, just all of that, those emotions that come with surviving trauma, you know?
I'm like, I think I need to book an appointment now, right after we get this.
I've been telling you.
She literally has been on my ass, like, you have to do this, you have to do this. But honestly, life has just been so chaotic the past like month for me that now I'm finally like, okay, debrief. Now I can get back into mode and I can get back into what I have to do. But even just you saying like the trauma, like, it's true. Like, my childhood was very abusive. Then I became like, I married into abusive relationships because it was just that like, I don't know what I even want to call it, like belief, or like I was just accustomed to it. So maybe like my old version or my old self felt that was normal. And it's crazy because I have major anxiety now. And my therapist told me, you know, he was like, I kind of feel like you always had anxiety, but you lived in fight or flight mode for so long that now that you're not in that fight or flight mode, this is the real you. And I'm like, fuck, no, this is not the real me. And sometimes I fight back because I'm like, I need to go back to like that strong, independent, like, I really don't give a fuck attitude. I can't even get there anymore. Even if I try, like, I try so hard. I'm definitely not who I was before, but even if I try to go back, like, there's no
I
going
totally
back.
relate to that. Like, Andre, you have no idea, because I was the same, like very guarded and like very punchy, and like, you know, nobody could mess with me or my friends, or we'd like throw down. Like, it just wasn't
That was me.
whatever, you know. I'm a Leo, so I'm very protective.
Oh gosh, yes, you are.
It's like
Woo, Leo.
like my pride, you know, and my hair, obviously. But yeah, anyways, it was just like healing that, softening, going into feminine energy is like, it's so interesting because we kind of want to move into balance, but there is an identity that shifts. There's like a loss. There's a mourning that we have to do of that version of ourselves. But when you think about it, you're like, well, why was I like that?
Yes.
You know, I was angry. Like that's the main reason. I was angry. I was guarded. I was suspicious of people. Like there's just all of those elements that at one point was maybe funny or served a purpose. Like it doesn't work for us anymore. So there is something that shifts internally, like our cells, our ways, our mind, our emotions, we just shift. And it's kind of hard to be soft, to be vulnerable, to accept help. That just wasn't the norm for us. And part of me feels like, man, I care too much. I shouldn't give a fuck anymore. Like, fuck all these people, fuck their job. And, you know, like, but then you're like, oh, but I can't. And you're just like emotional about it. So I feel like we just gravitate towards like how we should be as humans. Like that tough exterior is just being in fight or flight. And that's not how we're meant to live life. It's just
A
not.
funny story is like, so I think I told Roxy this, like one of my daughters asked to move back home.
Mhm.
Me being me was like, fuck no, nope, I'm not giving up my space. Nope, nope, nope. Like, and everybody was like, dude, that's what kids do. They come back home when they need help. Like, that's what parents do. They open their doors. And I'm like, nope, nope. And my husband was like, dude, like, why do you have to be such a bitch? Like, you have to analyze, like, that's your daughter. Like, she has nowhere to go. Nope, I don't care. Nope, like doors weren't open for me, so it's not going to be open for her. I went into that old version instantly, right? It was like so fast to go back. And then after I got over my high horse, it was like, okay, let me figure out how I'm going to move you in. Like total bipolar. Like I feel like spirit was like, bitch, you're not that old person no more. Quit trying to be that. Here's a reality check. Like I totally just woke up with like, okay, change of heart. What can I do to help you? But at first it was that initial like fight or flight, like, nope, 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 no, you're not coming to my space. Nope, you're not invading my bubble. Nope. So
That's the trauma response. And that's how most of us are living. See the world through our trauma responses, through our trauma, like survival patterns. And then we have a trauma response, which is for some reason, like that was a trigger for you. And I think what's important to note is that you recognize that. And, you know, when you do the work, that's the whole point is you get to recognize when you're in your trauma responses, when you're acting from a place of fear or anger or whatever. But when you're not, like, imagine that one decision. If you would have stayed in that response, in that pattern, that would have been a really difficult answer / like experience for your daughter. Could have been like a whole thing, you know? And like when you're not working on yourself and when you're not in that place of awareness, that stuff just happens. And it's like, yep, just another problem, just another like fucked up relationship that I have, because all of that is going to affect our relationships because we're like the one constant, you know, wherever you go, there you are. Yep. So I think that's like really beautiful that you were able to come through and have that moment with her.
I feel like spirit just tests me a lot, you know, like I go back to old ways where I'm like, I get in that, fuck that bitch. And then it's like something will like, it's like a gush of, and I'm like, okay, never mind.
Spirit's keeping you humble.
Yeah.
But I guess after you explain like the work you do and stuff, I guess the name that you chose for it is really perfect for it, because I looked it up to see like how to pronounce it first, and then obviously it gave me the definition, which was like rebirth, like infinite cycles of life, like shedding and kind of like rebirthing and stuff. So it totally makes sense. Is that part of the reason why you chose to name it? Or
yeah, absolutely. And I was like, whatever, people can't say it or spell it, it is what it is. Like it just felt so right. And the thing was, like, you know, I was seeing that symbol for a long time, just like maybe like 2 years. It was just popping up. I would see it like a tattoo or I was doing a tarot reading with one of my friends, and I was asking her, like, what do I need to, like, what should I focus on? It was kind of in the beginning of developing the business and stuff. And it was like the world card, but she was holding like a mirror in one hand, and then like there was another, like a snake in the other hand, and it was like the Ouroboros. And I was like, holy shit. And I had already said, like, playing with this name, and there it was again. Like, so it was just spirit was leading so many clues. So I kind of had to just roll with it. I was like, yep, that's it. And then my friend Allison Peck, she's a Akashic Records reader, and she's amazing. She's an artist. She did a reading for me. We were trading, and this was like way in the very beginning, and we bartered services, and she had seen the name, and I was like, what's the name that you see with this Ouroboros? She's like, it's just Ouroboros like .healing. And I was like, all right, there it is, it's done. So, that's how I started the Instagram handle and got the website. And from there, it just kind of kept reinforcing this idea that healing is cyclical, not linear. And we're just millions of iterations of ourselves over and over again. Never ends.
That's awesome. But literally it took us like 5 minutes before, like, to practice saying it and stuff. Cause here I was, the Mexican in me was coming out, Ouroboros, and like
Literally,
rolling all the R's in it.
Ouroboros.
literally, that was her first like try. It was like the Mexican version.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. We can make it Mexican. Fine.
But once you say how to pronounce it, it's kind of easy to say it if I'm not looking at it. And I guess that's me because I went through speech for so long and having to like enunciate and stuff, that whenever I look at something, I want to enunciate every single letter.
Yeah, not with that word.
Ouroboros, right?
Ouroboros.
Ouroboros.
Yeah.
She's gonna keep saying it over and over and over and over.
I've heard like some English people say like Ouroboros, like that.
Oh, because it's O-U-R at the hour.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Ouroboros.
Oh, yeah.
So to each their own.
So what kind of like ideas or advice like would you give somebody to build confidence? Because like I feel like what you have, the emotional part, is like where people, I don't know, me personally, I feel like people need to dive into that emotion where, like, example, why am I still in this toxic relationship? Why don't I leave if I know I need to leave? Like, where do you start with that type of response?
I would say that it's probably the connection to self is the first part, and it's all connected, right? So we just go back to this. What did we grow up hearing? What did we grow up believing? Or in the relationship, what were they saying to us constantly? Were they like brainwash us into believing that we're not worthy or that it's our fault? So it's like, pay attention to the things that you're saying to yourself. And if you would say them to like your best friend, if you wouldn't, then there's probably a chance that it's not something good. So don't say it to yourself. And then the other thing that for me has been the most important part of my healing is reconnecting back to self, meaning like my body, who I am, how I feel, what I think. And when you have low self-esteem or low self-worth, it's almost like a numbing thing happens. And that's something that I really went through for a long time. Like, I didn't even know I was like depressed for like a couple of years. I was just so numb because I didn't want to feel that. It was too painful to like relive that experience and want to like work on it. So that's the thing, is like when people are ready, they're ready. And when they're not. So there's just such a huge spectrum of healing. And the first step is just awareness and admitting like, this is where I'm at and this is how I feel. And surround yourself with people who love you and friends who care about you and love you, because having that like reinforcement of positive words, having people reflect your brilliance, your light, what's cool about you, what they like, that means so much. Like, I couldn't back in the day, like I remember I couldn't really say, like I couldn't find one thing that I liked about myself. Like people were like, well, what do you like about yourself? And it's like, how do I not burst into tears right now? Like it's so
Exactly.
like painful to try to find value or like a nice thing to say when you've been bombarded with negativity and just bullshit, you know? So I'm a big like fan of Abraham Hicks. I know they are kind of controversial, but for me, it was like I couldn't really get out of my head back then. And I wasn't working with anyone. I couldn't afford therapy. I couldn't afford working with a coach or a healer. There was just like YouTube, you know? So I would Google on the YouTube thing, like Abraham Hicks and like how to find your purpose or how to not be sad, like whatever. And if I could have other people in my ear who were just like delivering positivity or affirmations, anything good in my ears meant that I was focusing on something else other than what I was thinking in my mind. So like the negative playback, like that loop, I had to interrupt that. And some people, you know, work out, like people find different ways. Some people drink, some people do drugs. Like that's really what we're trying to do is just stop that mental loop, that negative self-talk.
I think that's
So
the hardest part is finding that, like,
mhm.
you know, because it's so easy to feed into the negative when you're just so that low in your self-confidence. So it's easier to go with what's wrong or bad,
Yeah.
opposed to like what's good and helpful. I don't know. I feel like if I go back into my journey, I felt like I because I'm like terca and like, you know, like I had to hit rock bottom to know better. So I had those friends that were at the door, like, get your ass up, stop being depressed. And I'm like, fuck you. Nope, nope, nope. And it took for me to like finally, like, there was no help, right? I had to like check myself and be like, okay, get the fuck up. Like, and it took baby steps, but I feel like in that moment of, I'm gonna call it darkness, because for me it's like, oh, I don't even
Yeah,
want to
for
on this.
sure.
Those years of darkness was very stubborn, hard-headed, you know. It's easier to just roll with the depression and anger and shit that's wrong and focus on it than it was to focus on the good. And it's crazy because now look at us in our place today. Like when we look back at those periods of life, it's like, fuck, how did I deal with that? Like, why did I think that was okay? Why
Mhm.
I think like that was like the best version of my life? Why was I so in love with somebody who was so toxic? Like, what the fuck was
Yeah.
I thinking?
Yeah, it's crazy to think back. Like it feels like an entirely different
Yep,
lifetime. Like
yep,
there's times where I can't even remember things from back then now
yes,
because it's been so long. But I definitely remember just that feeling of, man, I felt so hopeless. I felt so freaking hopeless. Like I just felt like that was gonna be it forever. And
yep.
I think that's the fear is like, I'm just like, this is it. This is my life. Um, but you know, every single thing is temporary. Nothing is going to last forever. Even depression, even, you know, shitty emotions, especially emotions. Emotions are the most temporary things that we can experience. For anyone who's really struggling, I would just say like put something good on the radio or in your headphones because you can't muster up that positivity yourself, so you have to listen to someone else. Like yeah, motivational speakers were the ones that sort of brought me out of that really like dark phase. And then I started working with a coach.
And you mentioned like there's so many emotions we could honestly feel and we do feel and go through and stuff like that. For our listeners listening in, what is emotional detox and why is it so important?
So emotional detox is something that I offer. It's like a offering on my site that it was something I was noticing where people were really like stuck, but they weren't, maybe they were already going through their healing journey, or maybe they were just kind of like stuck in a weird situation, like emotionally speaking. And it was kind of like just a little detox. Like when, you know, it's like after New Year's or the holiday season, you're like, God, I need a detox, right? You just need to like clean it out and have like a little fresh, like zhuzh yourself up. And the emotional detox kind of works with individuals who are in that place where they just need a little refresher. And I work through tons of different emotions with them and find trapped emotions that they maybe have been circulating after a breakup or after like a hard time. Maybe they got laid off or something has come up, and we do process a lot of emotions. But the reason that emotions stay stuck in our bodies is because we don't process them. So if you're someone who doesn't like to talk about your feelings, you have plenty of trapped emotions that we can work with. If you see crying as a weakness, you have a lot of trapped emotions, because I mean, crying is literally the only thing that serves this purpose for crying is to release emotions. That's it. Why do we cry? It's so interesting. Like, I don't know. I always think crying is like, what a human experience that is. Like we have a little water that like falls out of our face, and it's like tied to an experience that we feel. So the emotional detox is either 3 weeks, I call it like the mini detox, or a 7-week process. And we go through and find like, what are the emotions that you're still holding on to? And when you have a trapped emotion, it's almost like, it's like a magnet. So let's say you're like 4 or 5 years old and you have an experience where someone laughs at you, right? And you're 4 or 5, so you don't know any better, and you take it personally because you're a sensitive kid, and you like hold this like feeling of rejection in your little body because you don't understand how to communicate what you're feeling, or everyone's laughing, so no one's like, are you okay? What happened? How do you feel? And you process. That's the thing with a lot of trapped emotions being trapped from childhood, is we didn't have the tools to really process those emotions. So a lot of people have very like old trapped emotions. So back to the example, like if you have this feeling of rejection, the next time this happens, that trapped emotion, that energy that lives in you, it grabs that, where it's like, oh, it's this feeling of rejection, and you have like a chip on your shoulder, where the rejection that you feel just grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's just like accumulating this emotional energy, and that becomes like the way that you see the world. It's like a sensitive spot. So we just hold this energy in our bodies for as long as we can, until you start doing this type of work. And you know, you go to anger workshops or you work with a therapist, and you literally have to release the energy. Otherwise, cognitively, it's not something you're thinking about, but energetically, it's still there, just hanging out. And that's why people like, you know, get all these weird illnesses and autoimmune disorders, and you know, like things like MS. Like so many of our illnesses are based in this type of like just an overwhelming amount of emotions that are not processed. And the doctors are like, everything's normal. Nothing here says that there's anything wrong.
So true.
You know, but you're like, your body is like suffering. So that's another reason why I like doing this, because emotions are just one part of the puzzle. If we have a lot of this sort of pent up like toxins of emotions, then we start developing autoimmune disorders. So I help a lot of people through releasing, and a lot of their symptoms start to get better. Like I've worked with people who have fibromyalgia, MS.
What about IBS? Do you think that's emotion?
Possibly, because the stomach really is responsible for the emotions of like fear and nervousness, anxiousness. So when you have an overwhelming amount of those emotions, like it's gonna mess with your internal system, digestion, having to use the bathroom often, or not being able to use the bathroom. I think when I was going through the last breakup, like I had a lot of issues with my stomach and my digestion. that's the one thing where I was like, oh yeah, my body's freaking out right now, because I was so nervous and anxious, and I was just like in knots. And when I was little, that's how my emotion or stress would sort of manifest. Like I would have an upset stomach, and I wouldn't want to go to school. Like I was, I was bullied for a little while. So I was like nervous as soon as I woke up. I was like, just tense and like not really wanting to go to school. And I would tell my mom my stomach hurt. And it really did. Anxiety and tension and all of that comes from the stomach.
Yeah, I freaking like going when I like I already have anxiety, so flying on planes, it's like I could go to the restroom right before we board, but I'm like check in, beep, walk onto the thing, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to pee again. And it's like just because of the fear, I'm like, I can't hold it, I can't hold it, I can't hold it. An embarrassing story is like a few months ago, like I don't know, my nerves got the best of my stomach, and we were like in land mode. We're like, put your seatbelts on, we're gonna be landing in 30 minutes. I was like, dude, I can't, I have to go to the restroom. Like, dude, this is going to be so bad. So I'm like beeping for the flight attendant because everybody's sitting down. You can't get up. And I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm going to like shit myself on this plane. Like I have to get up. And I had my daughter with me. She was like, Mom, you can't get up. And I was like, dude, I'm going to run to the restroom. And so I'm like beeping the thing, like flight attendant come, and nobody's coming. And I'm like,
I know.
up because like we're going down. So luckily I waited till we landed. Right when we landed and it was like the seatbelt light came off, I jumped out of my seat, and everybody's already getting up to get out, and I'm like, excuse me, I have to go to the restroom. Excuse me, I have to go to the restroom. There was this one guy, he was like, oh, I don't want to be in her way. I'm like, yeah, you don't want to be in my way. But it's like the nerves, like the nerves that gets the best of you. Or
Oh man. Well, yeah, once you have like imbalances in your emotional body and your energetic body, it will start to slowly affect the physical body. By the time it's manifested into like a thing, like something with a diagnosis, you then have to treat the physical body and the emotional body together. If anyone's struggling with physical symptoms, I would never say like, oh, well, emotion code will cure you or heal you. Like, still take your medication, still do all of the things for the physical body. Like we're connected, right? Everything is like a perfect machine. So we have to really treat both sides of us now, like physical and the emotional. And then if it's causing mental distress, we got to help the mental side of it, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. So we are very much interconnected, and everything affects everything. So one part of it isn't going to fix you.
But I will say, when I got on a call with her, and then we did she did her thing with me or whatever. It was my left knee that was like bugging me, where whenever I stand up, it pops. When I walk for a long time, it'll pop. Like it pops like no other. Like I freaking, yeah. Well, she went in to see if there was any trapped emotions and stuff. Come to find out, it was like terror from like my abusive marriage. It was failure from back when I was like in 6th grade on the basketball team. It was like these emotions where like I don't really think about anymore, but the body's been so accustomed to it that it's kind of like trapped. And then afterwards,
like release that, or how do you fix that?
So Nicole did the like you asked if it was okay for it to be released or not, and then kind of to release it. And then after that little like mini session I had with her, she's like, okay, go ahead and get up, walk around, see how it's feeling. I got up, no pop. I walked around. It got to the point where I was like, okay, this isn't right. It's supposed to pop.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow.
I started doing energy work through Reiki, and for me, being the type of person I am, like I kind of need something grounded. So I need I need to know what it is. Like Reiki just goes where it's needed, and you're like, bing, bang, boom, you're done. But for me, I needed to like, when did this happen? Why did it happen? Who did it? Like get all of the
details.
Right. And with emotion code, like it's not just finding the emotion. So we find the emotion and then we ask if there's anything else we need to know about it. And that process really links the conscious and subconscious mind so that they're like in alignment and they're in agreement. Like, yes, I recognize this. And then I ask, are you ready to release this? Because sometimes some things can feel more of like an identity where maybe you don't want to release this entirely. You know, some people are not ready to release certain things that they've adapted as part of who they are. And if they are, then we release it. So the releasing process is really more like, I guess it's like quantum healing, like it's moving through all time, space, realities, you know, past, present, and future lifetimes, and releasing it through the governing meridian, which is the major energetic like highway over our lip, over our head, through the back of the spine, and connects to the spinal column and into our, like the base of our spine. So like that's where all of the energy from our bodies is like circulating throughout our bodies basically, and in our minds it's just full of energy, right? Like electrical pulses are moving throughout. So releasing that is setting the intention and using my hand over the governing meridian and sort of like deprogramming it, because our hands were like magnetic, right? So it's the process of reprogramming, releasing, setting the intention, working with spirit, us being in agreement that this is working. It's so much, you know, and people are like, well, that's just like, you know, it's just because they want to believe. And it's like, well, yeah, like people need to want to believe that they can change, that they can heal, that things are working. Otherwise, if we didn't believe in anything, we wouldn't do anything, right?
It's real. And it's just a matter of if you want it. You know, somebody who, if it's just like a pain, right? Like if, like Roxy, if your knee's constant in pain and you go to the doctors, you go to therapy, you do all these things, but you're still in pain, you finally get to a point where you're just like, I just need relief. I'm willing to do anything and anything and anything for relief. It's the same with this process. You know, you have to get to a point where you're like, I'm ready to heal. I'm ready to change my life. I'm ready. Like, I want to be happy.
Yeah.
If you don't get to that point, you're always just going to stay comfortable and you're going to have the excuses and you're going to continue with the cycle of thinking it's okay and going through the same bullshit. Because how many times did we deal with our relationships where it's like you get yelled at or you get yelled, whatever, and you feel like shit, but then you go and you have sex and you're like, okay, I love you again. Or they're nice to you and you're like, okay, I love you again. Right. And then it's like the same shit where it's like, okay, you're a bitch.
Like, give you crumbs, just the bare minimum.
Well,
Oh,
this was
I like how you put that. The crumbs. I'm gonna write that down and use it on people that keep on going and be like, stop getting the crumbs.
Uh-oh, her mind's already rolling with this one. Her mind's already going.
Good.
I really think that this was a good place for people to kind of just start, where you feel lost, where if you feel like it's something different, you know, it's something that I feel is very beneficial. And Roxy's here to you know, to vouch that it's something that helped her. It's something that I don't know, through emotion, which is so crazy that you could you know, tap into a knee and find emotion that was trapped and heal it. Like, that's fucking badass.
Yeah, because it's, you know, it's the energy that is causing that tension there. And like the way that I was learning about it is like, you know, each emotion has its own vibration. So like shame is the lowest vibrating emotion that we have, whereas love is the highest. And releasing that energy, it's like, I mean, it feels like a release. It feels like you're lighter at the end. Like, how did you feel after the session, Roxy? Like, did you feel what?
I felt lighter, like not that you gave me permission to release it, but it was more like a reminder that I'm able to release it, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So it did help in that sense. And I guess like I'm sure like someone that goes to you doesn't have to have like knee pain or a specific ailment or pain.
Yeah.
Like, can you just like tap in and like say, okay, you have this trapped emotion, let's work on it type of thing.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I was kind of thinking about of mentioning, that people who don't really like to talk about emotions, or people who don't, like when you go to therapy and they're like, so what's up? What's going on? And you're like, like you can't think of it, or you can't put it into words, or you don't know how to describe it. It's like you have to like do a lot of digging in traditional talk therapy. So with the emotion code, it's like, what do you want to do? Like, how do you want to be? That's something I ask. Like, if you could be anywhere in 5 years, like, how do you want to feel? What do you want to do? And then we just work towards that feeling and see what's blocking you. What's the limiting belief that's blocking you? And then we release that. So it's less work for the person that's coming to me and more work on my end of like going through the process of finding it. And it's not long, it's quick. Like we had an hour session.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, boom, your knee's better. You
Yeah.
feel like.
Yeah.
So
and
I over like 7 weeks or 5 months, like that's where transformation starts to happen.
Oh yeah, I could only imagine. And then I love the part where like the person doesn't have to like talk about it or open up about it. Like as long as they're giving you consent, you'd be able to work with them and that emotion and releasing it and stuff like that. So in our show notes, we're obviously going to put your website where they can reach out to you, your Instagram. I would highly recommend people to like reach out to you and like learn more about this, because like I said, I have it, planned. I will be working with you.
She's manifesting it. She is manifesting it now.
Put it out there. We'll hold space for it.
Yeah. But before we wrap up, we're gonna have to play our 2 truths, 1 lie. We saved it to the end this time.
My stomach just sank a little. That's so funny. I don't know why. Like
that's what everybody says.
okay.
The nerves. This is the nerves part. Hey, we should be the one nervous, okay?
Right. Okay. I think I've got it. Okay. So I was at a bar once and I definitely like bum rushed a bunch of people to hug LL Cool J when he like pulled me over like this. When I was 17, my dad helped me get my first car, and it was an 87 Porsche. I was once in an all-girl percussion band and I played the accordion.
I think the second one was a lie.
I think the last one was a lie. What was it?
Right. The second one was the lie.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Roxy.
The second one was the lie. I definitely met and hugged.
Okay. I thought that was the truth. But you really had a 98 Porsche?
No, that was a lie. But I had a 65 Chevy Nova. That was the car that my first car. Yeah, I was like super into hot rods and Harleys and like bad boys. So I was like, I'm gonna get one of these cars and see like
I cannot even see that. The bad boys and Harleys. No, like the Nova, yeah, I could see that. Like that style.
My Harley, first boyfriend was like a greaser.
Oh wow, yeah.
Myself. Yeah. But yeah. Back in the day, there wasn't like hot dudes on motorcycles. They were all fat, old, and beer. And I was like always wanting to date some like, hot dude on a Harley and be like on the bike. Yep. And now they're everywhere, and I feel like I'm a little too old. Like, dang, one day it'll happen, I guess. I don't know.
You are never too old.
Right? It's true.
Never too old.
Right, they can stay young.
Yeah, very true. You can make makeup. Well, this was fun. I appreciate you stopping in and giving us your advice, your techniques, your skills, everything. I really, really, really appreciate your time and all that you do for everybody in the community, especially because that's what we're here to do, is continue to build this community as much as we can. So here we are.
Thank
Well, this
you.
was fun. Anything you want to add, Rox?
No, just that you have to like reach out to her and schedule that call. that I've been
Okay,
bugging you
okay.
about.
Yes, I would love to take on some new clients, some new short terms. If you guys just want to test it out, like that's usually what I suggest. Just try it. And I have a 3-week session package just to like dip your toes and see how it feels. And what else? If you want to come on a retreat with us, like sign up for our websites, like the mail, sign up for the newsletter on the website. Because that would let you know when our next retreat is, because I'm pretty sure this one's about to fill up like any minute now. We have like 4 people wanting to book a spot and there's only 3 spots left. So we're like, who's gonna get
it? That's exciting.
That is
Yeah, we're
super
really
exciting.
And here comes Roxy and Drea. Let's book them.
I can't this year.
Definitely come to the next one for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. This was a blast. Thank you for letting me share my weird witchy life with everyone, and hopefully, make a difference in someone's life.
We're all for it.
All right. Well, we are sending tons of love and tons of light, and we are out this BITCA.
Stick that's inside the minds of psychic mamas. Good vibes. Stick that's inside the minds of psychic.
Doom. Welcome back, you guys, to season freaking 3.
4.
Oh, okay. We'll do it again. I wrote 4. I wrote 3.
Mamas.